Good evening and welcome to this Casa and Gunner Shot webinar on Trump and the Indo-Pacific. The Indo-Pacific is dear to the Indian Ocean, and Indian Ocean is dear to India. Though the Western
I'm
construct
struggling
is
to
that
sit down on the.
Indo-Pacific is more of the West, or rather the Pacific part of it, right? But given that, as it may, today we have a very erudite and intelligent panel who's going to talk to us about the Indo-Pacific. Here they are with me, on to going clockwise, General Gautam Moorthy, Brigadier Arun Sahgal, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, and of course, Dr. Pooja Bhatt. At the outset, I'd like to welcome all of you to the seminar, please. Good evening to all of you, sirs. Right. With this, I'll hand you over to General Gautam Moorthy. Thereafter, I'll take it up after his introductory remarks. All yours, sir.
Thank you, General Shankar. Good evening, my fellow panelists, and good evening to all your viewers. This is the second in the series of the Trump webinars that we are having. The first one was Trump and the world according to Trump. The second one is this Trump and the Indo-Pacific, and the third we'll follow up with Trump effect on West Asia. Now, President Trump's views on the Indo-Pacific are very clear. It was being characterized by a strategic focus on economic interests, as we know from his statements and the actions of his team. Also, focus on security partnerships, and basically, he's looking to respond to China's influence in the region. Let us not forget that it was his administration which introduced the concept of a free and open Indo Pacific in late 2017, where he emphasized the importance of sovereign nations thriving in freedom and peace. This concept basically aimed to build collective security through alliances and partnership while promoting economic prosperity and good governance. Mr. Trump is very clear. His primary focus is economics. He's a businessman and heavily influenced by trade considerations. That has not left him. He views economic gains as a priority. And he has often suggested that he really doesn't oppose Chinese actions unless they directly threaten US interests. Now, this obviously has led to a lot of mixed signals for US allies. And you can see what is happening in Europe, not yet reflected in the Indo Pacific, but let's be open to that. The other thing is that he aims to bolster support for regional allies such as Japan, Australia, South Korea, and the Philippines to counter China's ambitions. Now, an important partnership and cooperation he's looking for is with India, which was designated as a major defense partner during his presidency. And of course, when Biden came in, it got supplemented further and now likely to be strengthened once we iron out our trades and our tariffs that he has been harping on. Towards Taiwan, he has, although shown support, but he does not unnecessarily provoke China. He has not done so till today. It's taken over, it's almost 2.5 months, but he has not said anything about China so far. Sorry, on Taiwan so far. About the other alliances, his foreign policy emphasizes bilateral relations. That we've seen that happening rather than multilateral alliances. And he believes in continued engagement with India through defense collaboration, economic partnerships, and he's looking at part of a supply chain and a broader role for India to counterbalance China's influence in the Indian Ocean. How this will play out, I'll leave it to my learned fellow panelists to speak about. So he's looking at basically assertive security measures against China while prioritizing the US's economic interests. But what are the major criticisms that he has faced? One is an inconsistent adherence to values. Critics have argued that his administration has strayed from promoting democratic values and human rights, But Trump is very clear what works for the US only will happen. He does not bother which government is in power in which country. He has alienated some allies, especially his European allies. And I told you there's nothing happened so far in the Indo Pacific. Let's hope it continues that way. Economic protectionism, he's been challenged on this, and he looks at issues as winners or losers. But then again, that is the way Trump operates, and we've got to deal with that. Uh, how US will guarantee security to allies like Japan and Philippines is not known as yet. His reluctance to firmly commit to defending Taiwan, as I've already said, that we really do not know how it will pan out. And how does it actually affect the security dynamics? One is the enhanced freedom of navigation. He has escalated US Navy operations in the South China Sea earlier to challenge China's expansive claims. Then military partnerships I've already spoken, and we will have to see, and I think Brigadier Sahgal will speak about it, about US bolstering its military presence in the region and carrying out joint exercises with their allies. So there is an unpredictability about the US commitments under Trump, and every nation in the Indo Pacific is looking at their security strategies, keeping this in mind. Countries have to look at greater self reliance and, and internal cooperation with each other. Now, how the strategic rivalry with China will play out, we really do not know, but I look at it as there will be some a great amount of military competition in addition with tariffs and trade. Uh, Basically, we are looking at a very uncertain period in the Indo-Pacific. That's all that I have to say, General Shankar. Back to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. You put it up in a neat little fashion. I think the main problem which you highlighted is the contradiction in the Trump policy. What is the Trump policy in as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned? One is not clear. Um, if you look at the annual threat assessment which has been put out by the USA just 2-3 days back, where there is more brevity than clarity, you see that their focus is on transnational terror and or hybrid threats and China. If that is the case, their overall focus has to be Indo-Pacific. But Trump seems to be more focused on Greenland and the Panama Canal. So there's a diversion, there's a complete contradiction in this. Second, the problem with what Trump is doing, as you brought it out, but I'll put it in a clearer focus, is that he wants to take his allies along and he says so, but he's tariffing them. As a result of the way he's gone about with tariffs with South Korea, Japan, and India, the three main partners of his in this area, he's pushing them towards China. And you see in the past 2 weeks, India's relations with China, Japan's relations with China, and South Korea's relations with China are getting closer trade-wise. Politically, they might be or not. That's a fact because they're coming into some kind of a three-way pact. But you look at China, China has become more aggressive, right? Against Taiwan, against Philippines, against Australia, just after Trump has taken over. And this is despite the fact that USA has bolstered his presence here. So there's a whole mass of contradiction in the Indo-Pacific. So that's what we need to unravel. And there are a lot of talk. In fact, let me put it this way. There's neither talk of Indo nor the Pacific. So one is not very clear as to where Trump and his Indo-Pacific strategy is going, if he has one. In this kind of a context, I'd request Ambassador Sajjanhar, sir, could you throw your light on it? Or you could critique me for my views, I'm sure about it, or say what you have to say. Please, sir.
Thank you very much, General Moorthy, for this very generous and gracious invitation. Thank you very much, General Shankar, for your opening remarks. And, in the 8 minutes or so that you have given me, General Shankar, I'll try to flag some of the issues that have been mentioned by both of you and maybe add a few of my own. So, the title of our seminar today is Trump and the Indo-Pacific. It doesn't mention Trump 2.0. So, if you permit, I will also deal a little bit with the Trump 1.0 and then try to see as to, as he comes to Trump 2.0, as to what are the differences. I think first it's useful to recognize, I think, as General Murthy, you alluded to it in your remarks, that it was Donald Trump was the first US president to really identify China as a strategic competitor of the United States and a challenger to its hegemony around the world. Before that, I think everyone who is on this show would remember about the concept of Chin America that was spoken about around 2005, 2006, or the concept of G2 that was spoken about when Barack Obama made his first visit to China in 2009, the first year that he came. Then even sorry, during the visit of Xi Jinping to Washington, D.C. in 2015, there was also the talk between the two countries, United States and China, of working together for global peace and security. Because that was the time when the United States and Barack Obama, particularly, it needed China's support on other transnational issues like climate change, etc. So it really fell upon Trump in 2017. He came to power, and the first few months, in fact, he identified China as a strategic competitor and challenger to its global hegemony. What did it result in? Basically, Asia Pacific was renamed as Indo Pacific. The Pacific Command was US Pacific Command was named as the US Indo-Pacific Command. There was the revival of the Quad in November 2017, as General Murthy you mentioned. There was a senior official or vice minister level meetings of the Quad that were held on the sidelines of global international meetings, etc., except for the one that took place in Tokyo on the 6th of October 2020. Mind you, that was the time of COVID. COVID was
COVID.
raging everywhere. And, as far as travel is concerned, no one was really sort of going around, but still a standalone meeting was organized in Tokyo on the 6th of October, and all the other three foreign ministers traveled there. What does it signify? It signifies that Trump was really invested politically in a very big way as far as this concept, this idea of pushing back against China is concerned. And of course, as far as getting all this, in terms of having more patrolling to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific, to ensure that there is freedom of navigation in the open seas, freedom of overflights, all that is provided. Now, let us look at Trump 2.0. There we see what I would like to suggest is, in my view, Trump 2.0 is not a linear extension of Trump 1.0. If someone feels that, we've seen Trump 1.0, we know what he's going to do now in Trump 2.0, they are mistaken. These might have been the thoughts earlier, but I think looking at what he has been able to do in just over 2 months, I think we know that this man is much more confident, much more aggressive, much more assertive. I think his victory in 2016 came as a shock and a surprise, not only to the world, but to him himself also. This time, it has been a decisive victory. He won all the seven swing states. He won the popular vote. He has he has the trifecta under his control. Both the House of Representatives, the Senate, the White House, and the Supreme Court, all of them are under his control. His cabinet is totally beholden to him, unlike what happened in
Last
Trump
time.
1.0. He had to remove his Secretary of State, his NSA, I think 4 or 5 times. But these appointees in his cabinet, they don't have their own independent standing or base. So, and there is going to be no opposition from these cabinet members. Also, we have seen whatever Trump has done domestically or globally, the opposition from the Democrats has been pathetic. They seem to be completely paralyzed. I think the only opposition that seems to have come is from the courts, some of the courts to some of his orders that have been passed. Now let us look at what I'll not go into detail about the manner in which he's focusing on cozying up to Russia, the manner in which, for all practical purposes, he has thrown Ukraine under the bus, the manner in which he's been pushing back against NATO, against European Union, what JD Vance said at the Munich Security Conference, etc., etc. I'm not going into any detail on that, but I think this thing is quite clear that the message has gone to Europe that with its $21 trillion economy total, they have not been investing in their security. They've been very happy in getting the security cover and the nuclear umbrella cover from the United States. They have been very happy at getting cheap energy from Russia, very happy at having very strong economic linkages with China. That will not work any longer. So, we've seen all these statements coming from whether it is Starmer or Macron or Friedrich Merz, etc., etc. But I think what has been mentioned in the strategic circles is that maybe the United States wants to disengage itself from the Ukraine conflict and stop its support to Europe's security in such a big way because it wants to concentrate on China and it wants to concentrate on the Indo-Pacific. I don't think we have seen much indication of that so far because I have not seen very many significant pronouncements coming from the United States, either Trump or Rubio or Vance or anyone about the importance of the Indo-Pacific, importance of the Quad. Although, mind you, the first meeting, global meeting of the new Trump administration was on the
Was
21st of January, the first day and a few hours after Rubio was confirmed in his position as the Secretary of State. And that was amongst the Quad ministers, foreign ministers, on the 21st of January. So I think that gave rise to great enthusiasm and energy that Trump will be focusing very much on the Quad and the Indo-Pacific. But that has, as I said, there have not been any pronouncements made. The second point there is that Trump has been sending out very conflicting and mixed signals on China. For instance, the fact that he invited Xi Jinping to his inauguration, the fact that he had threatened that he is going to impose 60% tariffs on China on the first day that he comes to office. What did he do? He first imposed 10% and subsequently imposed another 10%. He spoke very warmly about his relations with Xi Jinping, even when Prime Minister Modi was, he was having a press conference with Prime Minister Modi on 13th of February when he was visiting. He also said that, when he had a telephonic conversation with Xi Jinping, he said that we had a very warm conversation. I'm looking forward to working with him to ensure that there is peace and security in the world. His messaging on TikTok, I think the all the listeners and viewers would remember that he had said in Trump 1.0 that TikTok is going to be banned. But right now he came, even when the Supreme Court had banned TikTok, he still gave it a reprieve of 75 days to deal with the issues that were there. So, that having been said, he's sending very mixed signals. And what it appears is that it is quite likely that he might be wanting a good, as General Murthy, you said, he's wanting a good trade deal, a hefty trade deal. You would recall that even in Trump 1.0, on 15th of January 2020, he had been able to get a good deal from China by which China would import an additional $200 billion from the United States. Unfortunately, after that, COVID intervened and he couldn't really take it forward. But if he were to get a satisfactory trade deal from China, would he lessen the pressure on the hegemonic aspirations of China and its intention to replace the United States as the most dominant power in the world? If that happens, what are the implications that it is going to have on India? The last point that I would like to make is, Trump had removed this reference to Taiwan from the website, saying that the United States is not in favor of an independent Taiwan. That has cheered Taiwan a great deal, and that had angered China a great deal. But then we see also the statement, the Senate confirmation hearing of Eldridge Colby, one of the senior officials of the Pentagon, and there he says that protecting Taiwan is not worth the cost. So, what message does it send to China? And in that context, I think what is going to be his focus on the Indo Pacific, freedom of navigation? I have not heard anything in terms of new as far as fleets are concerned, follow-up operations, etc., etc. I have not heard of them in recent days. And the last point here also is that as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned, the Quad is concerned, we've said it's a force for global good. It is, barring the aspect of maritime domain awareness, it does not have a security component. Of course, one can say that the Malabar exercises, which are held amongst these four members, are a parallel security component of the Quad itself. But otherwise, the Quad countries have been very focused on ensuring that we don't mention about security in this, and we speak about everything else: infrastructure, education, scholarship, vaccines, health, you name it. We speak about everything else except security. So, is it good enough to send out a message to China that what the Quad countries will stand together to push back against its aspirations, its aggressive and expansionist aspirations? Let me stop here, and some of the other aspects I will mention in the subsequent opportunity that I might get. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. You rightly pointed out that it was Trump who virtually, put the Indo-Pacific strategy into focus from a Pacific strategy into Indo-Pacific strategy. And he virtually was the one who instigated the Quad to come into being, though, of course, the legacy goes back to
Shinzo Abe.
Abe. Yeah, Shinzo Abe. But he
Mm.
was the one who put it. I still remember when
He
Mike
revived it.
Pompeo, he
Yeah,
revived it.
yeah.
And Pompeo went all the way to Japan along with our foreign minister, and that first foreign ministers meet kicked off the whole thing. So, but from then to now, like you rightly said, he's changed course and he's more interested in making a deal. One really doesn't know whether he's going to take up cudgels against China or not. Though the American presence is bolstered, like I said, the aggressiveness of China has not decreased. In fact, it has increased with firing in the Tasman Sea and all that. So there is a ambiguity in the US approach. Where it will go, we really don't know. Does it really want to concentrate on China alone? I don't know. And I suppose the contours of this will come out by September, October, when the first Quad summit takes place of this year under Trump 2.0. Of course, an issue which I'd like to also focus on is, look, we are all talking of Indo-Pacific as in Pacific, but there's a Indo part of it also where action is going on. For example, there's a lot of action going on against Houthis. There's Iran. That's also part of the Indo part of it. And I think the focus today is on this part of the world. The Indo part, the North Arabian Sea is as volatile as it can be. Uh, it strictly doesn't come into the framework of the Indo-Pacific construct, but it is there. So with this, Brigadier Arun Sahgal, sir, your turn. Please carry on, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me focus on some contours of American Indo-Pacific thinking that at least I am trying to pick up from various readings and writings from the new administration officials and some statements being made. The first fundamental point which I am picking up is that the centrality of Indo-Pacific remains focused on the China challenge, not threat, but China challenge. Number one. Number two, within the administration, there is a clarity that this challenge is the mainstay challenge for the United States in the coming years, particularly during the Trump administration, and it has to be dealt. The China challenge is again bifurcated into multiple things: technology challenge, the trade challenge, the challenge within the Indo-Pacific in terms of Chinese centricity in ASEAN, the way China is trying to extend its this thing is part of its gray zone operations and all that. All that is part and parcel of that. But in their thinking, particularly if you go through some of the Senate hearings, etc., you'll realize that there is a perception within the United States right now is that they do not have the capacity and the capability to single-handedly deal with the China's challenge. It is called the Lipman gap. The Lipman gap basically relates to the issue of what's called capacity versus capability. But the fundamental point remains is the core challenge to United States is from China, and it's a competitive challenge. So the next issue of importance is that the American establishment believes there are two central issues which are emerging or which are going to be of concern. The first issue is, of course, the fact is that 2027 is a date which the Chinese have given, or what is basically talked about date, when China believes that they will be able to execute what is called a Taiwan contingency. The recent military modernization, the developments, etc. And if you wanted to see the capabilities of the PLA Navy, you should have seen the way they handled the Australian issue. Three ships, with hypersonic weapon systems, with all kinds of technological gadgetry. They bamboozled the Australians. I mean, Australians did not have anything to do. I mean, that's only three ships of theirs. So the fundamental point is, and there was not a squeak from the Americans during this period. So the fundamental point is this thing is that they understand that there's a capability gap which is being built up, and the Taiwan could become an issue. The added to that issue is the emergence of new Quad with the American thinking. And if you go through the Senate hearings, you will find a lot of emphasis being paid on this new Quad, and that Quad basically is China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran. That's the new Quad which is coming about. So this brings me to the issue is what is the American strategy which is coming out. It's some middle-ranking officials in their writings have indicated a strategy called the spiral strategy. What is a spiral strategy? Basically, it means is that the core challenge is China, which has to be constrained and contained. It is not being posed as a threat at this point in time. Intrinsically, it's a threat, but it's a threat which has to be constrained and contained by multiple dimensions. Number two, I- Because America does not have the intrinsic capability of fighting directly as an offshore power with the Chinese, it has to build up strong alliance system in Asia, something which is a continuum from Biden administration. As part of this continuum, they are trying to build up capacities and capabilities. And the first step was taken 2 days back when the Japanese have finally decided to create a joint forces command and and decided that they will no longer be bound by the distances of their offensive capability. Earlier, if you recollect, when they gone Tomahawk missiles, etc., they talked about 1,000 kilometer envelope. Now they have given up that envelope. Okay, so it's a second element of that strategy. So basically, what is being done is that strengthen alliance partnerships is the second part of the strategy. And the third part of the strategy is using economic sanctions, etc., which basically tears down to tariffs, trade war, and technology limitations as a part and parcel of this. And because this whole Lippmann gap will take time to evolve, which is like 5 to 10 years, which they're talking about, they need that period for consolidation of capacities and capabilities. So there is a great degree of realism in the current administration in terms of not being gung ho about fighting the Chinese, but it is also important for them is to building up capacities and capabilities. This brings me to India. Now, when Trump talks about India's capability enhancement, etc., and there are three interesting elements that took place during Prime Minister's visit. One is capabilities, a transactional relationship in terms of buying strikers or buying more number of PATIs, buying number of what is called
F-35.
F-35, not F-35, but javelins and things like that. All those guys. F-35 was on the side that he did. That's okay. The second element, which is more important element, is that on the high technology plane, the high-tech has been called into a trust, and in that plane, there was agreement signed between Mahindras and the Tatas with the American companies to co-develop AI-oriented systems and integrate them with Indian capabilities. So those are the important part. I said, and all there is a certain degree of flip being given over there to this system. So what is important to understand is this: is that. We are going to see, and of course, the first engine of F404 has been delivered to
F-4 has
us
come.
yesterday, and the pipeline, which of course, incidentally, is now being touted as something which we are not aware of. We were not aware, at least I was not aware, that we took 5 years to take a follow-up decision after our initial orders. So the order was only placed in 2021. But be that as it may, there is this conscious effort being made to build up India capability and capacities. But there is a flip side in this. The flip side of this whole thing is, A, United States does not have the heft. Neither does the United States. Indo-Pacific Command, in any case, does not have the heft. The Indo-Pacific Central Command does not have the heft to cover the gap of the Indian Ocean from the east coast of Africa to our shores of Malacca. It does not have the capability. It is being left to us to deal with it. Everybody who are looking closely at the Chinese actions are very clear of the fact is 2025 onwards, we will see a much more movement and much more aggressive movement by the Chinese into the Indian Ocean. An interesting step was taken 2 3 days back when the Maldives and Chinese had a contract and which they're going to do this FDA. These are sensors being put underwater for attracting fish, but they can also be used for underwater surveillance facilities. So these issues are taking place, and but the interesting point over here is this: from Indian perspective, India has to be a standalone player in the Indian Ocean. We are going to get support in terms of the Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Awareness initiatives and such things like that. That will be there. But in terms of hard power, we will not see any capacities and capabilities of the Americans being deployed, or the other alliance partners being deployed over here. Number two issue is that we, as these things hot up over here, what is the kind of collaborative relationship we can have with the Americans? We are aware of the fact that during the Galwan crisis and during the standoff, Americans did provide us with intelligence. That issue can be taken as granted. That will probably continue. But what other elements, how far we want to go, those are some of the decisions that we will not to take, and we look at the Indo-Pacific from the Indian eyes. The question then comes about is this: is the Quad? Are we comfortable with securitization of Quad, or we are not comfortable with securitization of Quad? And the second element of that comes into play is this: is the India-China relationship and the American perspective. I mean, there is, as everybody can see from the statements, WMCC meetings, etc., taking place right now, an effort is being made to recalibrate our relationship in a positive direction with the Chinese. There is a class in the United States which sees this is from a perspective of a tainted glasses, that if India and China join hands together, or if they I mean, make up with the differences, that will create a scenario which will create a different kind of a strategic context in the key region in which the Americans find themselves short of power balance. They're finding themselves short of power balance primarily because totality of power of Australia, South Korea, Japan is not able to support the American effort, as indeed the capability of the India's intrinsic comprehensive national power and capacities are doing it. With the kind of technological development that we have been doing, long range systems, MIRV systems, I mean, cruise missile, long range cruise missile systems, all kind of capacities and capabilities which provide us with a long range reach are being developed, and those are much more intrinsic to the security of the region. And the number two point is, from the perspective of the Asians and the ASEAN, Indian power is seen as a bland power. I mean, India is a strong player, but not an assertive player. India likes to go along with the region. India is not an expansionist player. So, for maintaining a strategic balance along the sea lines of the communication and the trade routes, there is no other player who can be a much better partner, particularly in the context of any kind of an eventuality, than India. So, therefore, India is important to them, and therefore India's capacity and capability will be enhanced. But there is one big rider in their mind of the Americans, which is something which we don't highlight enough, and that Kida is the Russian thing. And if you heard the Commerce Secretary's remarks in Delhi on the NDTV, the show, how he talked about the fact that why do you want to buy? Why do you want to give up the Russian equipment? But here again, we have to be very conscious of one single factor. You buy America, good. You have a joint collaboration, coordination, and joint development with America, problem. What problem? Upgrades, software, develop a whole lot of elements will come into play. And as we're talking about defense procurement agreements, DPA, etc., are a long-winded thing. There are huge amount of regulatory mechanisms which we have to go through. So the sub big picture is India important to the United States. India capacity enhancement is in American interest. They will continue to support us. Indo-Pacific, China is the challenge, not a threat at this point in time. America is not at this point in time have the capability as an offshore power to fight the Chinese on their own. And particularly with the context of the new quad that has come up. I'll stop here.
Thank you, sir. You highlighted that, Trump considers China as a challenge rather than a threat, and hence the dynamics of the Indo-Pacific, the way he looks at it, has changed. And you also highlighted that, they don't have the capacity to take on China on their own. And hence they need allies and partners. And that was the result which came about in Quad. So to that extent, I mean, in my own opinion, this is not a situation which is new. It is always there. It has
True,
not
true.
changed. Nothing has changed.
Mm.
The fact that there's a gap in the Indian Ocean region was also always known, especially from the time they virtually vacated the Diego Garcia base, I mean, of equipment and although they're holding on to it. So to that extent, there's a continuum in what they want to do. They consider India as an important player in this whole story in the Indo-Pacific construct. On that, I have not had a doubt. The other fact also which you highlighted, which is very important, while they consider India as indispensable to their entire macro strategy, but then, they're hesitant to go deeper into this relationship from their side, leave alone our side. We have our own issues, right? And of course, the two factors which I think will come into play and which we have to contend is our continuing relationship with Russia, which we can't give up, especially with President Putin coming to India next month. That's the first part of the story. And the second part of the story is we started, normalizing our relationship with China. After all, First Secretary, I think he went recently to China a couple of days back to discuss how to open up trade. And there's a lot of expectation within the trade circles that we need to open up to China more. So to that extent, this will be a problem which we have to balance out and to see where we are going. Uh, so this puts the Indo strategy in, a bit of a question mark. And what is the Pacific strategy is not clear. Is China going to defend Taiwan or not is a question mark. So if you see resultantly, what has happened is that Japan has started expanding its own, military capabilities, probably with the idea that it knows that, it cannot completely rely on Japan anymore. Sorry, USA anymore. And we also have this kind of a realization that we have to be on our own, and we are doing so accordingly. And that these important points, I think, have a bearing on our long-term outlook from an Indian perspective. We need to probably do more with Japan, which I think is already there in other government circles. So, and we are living in interesting times. It is something which we have broken away from the thinking about 3-4 months back to now something which is completely new. We'll see how it rolls out. With this, I request Dr. Pooja Bhatt, who's an associate professor in Jindal University, School of International Relations. Madam, all yours. Your views, please.
Good evening, everyone. And first of all, thank you, Lieutenant General Shankar and Lt Gen Gautam Moorthy for inviting me for this show. I'm very happy to be a part of this discussion along with Ambassador Sajjanhar and Brigadier Sahgal, whom I've admired so much for this longest time. And it was absolutely eye-opening to listen to their remarks on Indo-Pacific from the foreign policy side and the military side. So what I'm going to do is just add the academic version of how I see Trump's engagement with the Indo-Pacific and how it's going to transform the region in the coming years. And I'll take next 7-8 minutes to make 2 or 3 big points about it. So to start with, as both the previous speakers also mentioned, that Trump has been the first most undiplomatic kind of president that United States of America has had. He's very unpolitical, unabashedly, very unpolitical about his statements, and he can say something and do something else. In a way, he has actually challenged the realpolitik of the international relations. The entire game of international relations operate on this idea of predictability and continuity amongst the leaderships, across the leaderships in a particular country, and that's how we have certain kind of ideas of policy continuity of a country. With Trump coming in this past administration and now coming with even more greater support in this duration of his next 4 years, has actually put the world again in a churn in terms of what his foreign policy is going to be. In this regard, I will see his foreign policy approach very domestic from his perspective. And I ask this question that what are the major driving forces that whatever Trump is doing in the Indo-Pacific, and what would be the long-term and short-term implications for the region would be? And I think we have to see the entire discussion from this point of view at this moment. To start with, Trump is, as has been rightly mentioned before also, he's a hardcore businessman. So he has achieved his second term through this Midwest, his voting base, which is very much, wants business to be back, and based on that he wants to bring those businesses back. So everything right from tariffs and sanctions that we are seeing from him coming are basically motivated by increasing the business community's confidence in the country. I don't think he is too much looking at the foreign implications of it, foreign affairs implications of this. I think his entire viewpoint is very domestically driven, and that is very starting point that all his foreign policy are very domestically driven. This brings me to my second point, that when he's making all these sanctions and tariffs across all the countries, whether they are friendly or they were adversaries at one point of time, he has actually played out it very equitably across all the countries, including India. Like our foreign minister was invited for his Trump's inaugural, and then after a few days we are seeing that India has also been put on a sanctions list, tariff list basically. So I think he has been very equitable, and he is seeing it from a very domestic point of view, that each country has to be, if that India will have some kind of tariffs for them, they will have the reciprocal tariff. So I would see it a very domestic approach to it. Now, what it is doing for the Indo-Pacific per se is largely in his very dim foreign policy predictions across the world, where Trump has been acting differently in Ukraine. You talk about Middle East. His policy in terms of Indo-Pacific has some certain consistency. Previous speakers also mentioned that he wants to remain constantly engaged in Indo-Pacific, and primarily because of trade, because the Indo-Pacific region being, beaming with the young demography, which acts as both production markets and consumer markets for most of the countries, including US, which are the manufacturing and export-based countries. I think he cannot let go of his vision of Indo-Pacific from trade perspective, and that goes back to his domestic agenda. Therefore, all his approach of securitizing the Indo-Pacific fits into that larger scheme of things. If you see from in Trump's first administration, he had actually initiated Quad, militarized Quad, and Indo-PACOM came into existence, and everything happened. When the Biden administration came, he tried to broaden it with adding new areas of Indo-Pacific concerns, such as health security, economic security, infrastructure development, and Wilmington Declaration that came out just before Biden administration finished its tenure exemplifies that how Quad was about to take shape in a larger security, human security kind of in a direction where, apart from only defense-based approach, there was a human security approach. Coming back to Trump's second administration, we see the Squad statement coming out, and he goes back to very hardcore military MDA-based security in his statement. So we see this kind of rollback from the Biden administration, but a continuity of the Trump administration towards Indo-Pacific, and primarily because he wants to secure the trade routes, trade lines, supply chains, technology, everything that is of the benefit for the US, I think. In this regard, he's also putting a lot of countries into a mode of self-help, what we call in international relations, that by pulling out his security umbrella from most of the countries, including South Korea and other countries, that he is not seeming very committed for the security of most of the countries in the Indo-Pacific region. Countries are now resorting to self-help. They are buying weapons, they are developing their own weapons, they are upgrading their defense strategy and documents, as we've seen in the case of Japan and other countries. So it has also led to more militarization of the region, both from the Trump aspect of it, where he wants the Quad to be militarized, and also from the countries, Indo-Pacific countries' perspective, those who are not anymore assured of Trump administration's protection for the Indo-Pacific. So in this regard, this is a second thing which is happening. Third thing I wanted to bring into this consideration is the reordering of multilateralism. Now, with Trump pulling back from most of the multilateralism across the world, we are also seeing that countries are no more reliant upon US as much as they're not reliant upon US. I think there's a fatigue which has set in amongst the global order, where they don't want to get into global power competition, neither US nor China. And now countries are revising and reordering the multilateralism. And you can see that how European countries are coming to India. And now India is focusing towards, alternate multilateralism. We're talking about SCO, BRICS. So I think with this rollback from the US, it is also impacting the multilateralism in a big way. And in the coming years, I think that's going to only expand. So with all these three major points that I had just made, my second question would be, what kind of harm are we seeing that Trump would be doing to this continuity of international relations and Indo-Pacific? And to my assumption, to my reading, Trump might end up doing more harm in the next 2.5 years, because after November 29, when we'll have US Senate meetings, where we might see some shuffle in the Republican majority, and he might not be that powerful at the power he holds. So in the next 1.5 or 2 years, we might see Trump doing a major harm in the multilateralism and bilateral system in the Indo-Pacific. And at the same time, it will also it is a boon in, disguise, that countries will actually move towards having alternate parallel system of governance and multilateralism. There would not be any more predictability and continuity that we actually assume, and countries will be basically very transactional, this has been a ball set up on rolling by the US, I think continued by many other countries. So in that regard, what should India do? And I think I agree with both of the previous speakers that India has to now start thinking about its own backyard first. Its relation with the US is definitely transactional in the next 4 years. US sees India as a major defense partner, where we are just a partner for defense and technology sales for it, and no more than that. So I think India is pretty much okay at this moment with this kind of relation, because we are also seeking that kind of development at our end. But I think that also gives a leeway for India to start developing its backyard. And with backyard, I don't mean the entire Indo-Pacific region, but only Indian Ocean region. Our eastern neighbors, our western neighbors, and Africa and Australia and the island nation countries. And I think that ball has again started being, you can see that ball has started rolling in the past few months and years, where we have more engagement with these countries. So I think our first area of priority for our development, for our prosperity, for our security would be the prioritizing the security of Indian Ocean region. Indo-Pacific region, I say, is a larger geostrategic concept which has a component of US-China rivalry, which most of the countries do not want. But Indian Ocean region, if you read per se, they are the countries who are which are underdeveloped, developing, seeking basic requirement, existential crisis such as employment and GDP growth and climate change disasters. These are the countries who are seeking these very existential solutions. And none of these countries are seeking either US presence or Chinese presence. And it is in this space India has a lot to offer that India can provide through its, it already has this goodwill with most of these countries. We need to work even better when we lose, our confidence with alternate leaderships in our neighborhood. I think India has to work more on that. It has to have more influence in Indian Ocean region, which can only benefit for all in the region. That's the leadership motto as well. I think we have to start thinking in next 4 years, how do we capture this space back for us? And I think with this, I will end my comments and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, madam. I think you made some pertinent points. The first thing is that, Trump has challenged the traditional mode of international relations. He's brought in his own Trump method of international relations. And he's a hardcore businessman. He looks at everything from a trade and business point of view. So Indo-Pacific is the place where he does maximum trade. So he's looking at it from a trade point of view and not from a security point of view. And I think the point about multilateralism, which you said, is very important. That multilateralism is changing drastically. The old concepts of multilateralism are gone. And we're going to see more of bilateral issues and trilateralism and quadrilateral formations being formed and going ahead. And then, of course, you also made the point that a lot of countries here have US fatigue, and equally countries have China fatigue also, and that's where the space opens up for India. It's up to India to step up to the to the requirement and fill that gap. So that's a big challenge, because while we realize we have this capability, or rather we have this opportunity, do we have the capability to fill that gap, or do we have workout issues, is a question mark. Especially in the light of the fact that what Brigadier Sahgal said about already China making an entry into Maldives, and it's already Bangladesh, the chief advisor of Bangladesh as of now is sitting in China. So new equations are opening up in our neighborhood, and we'll have to handle it with it. The Indian Ocean region is going to be a very interesting affair. Willy-nilly, while we don't want to go into the Pacific, we have already entered the Pacific in some form by our arms sales to Philippines and our outreach to Japan. So to that extent, I think we have to also start thinking differently. If that's my personal view, if China, any action, like what China is doing in Maldives, troubles us, I think we have to start troubling China by our actions there. And I think we are doing it if you read the Chinese press. With this, we've finished, and I'd like to thank everyone for your views. We'll take a few questions, some interesting questions, and then we'll see where to wind up. Okay. The first question, the USA has control over two oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. If they were to control the third ocean, would it be military sustainable, maintainable? Brigadier Sahgal, sir, all yours for this.
I mean, they had a control over Atlantic Ocean, but I think with the kind of policy Trump is following, that control might not be very difficult to maintain. He might have control over Greenland, the Arctic route. He's trying to control the Arctic route now. As far as Pacific is concerned, I'm very clear the Pacific is a contested ocean where the America is trying to maintain his predominance, which is being contested strongly by the Chinese. And Indian Ocean region, I don't think the Americans have the heft or the capacity to even come anywhere close to that. So I think uh, at best, America will now, from a two-ocean power, if he doesn't watch out, if he doesn't play his game properly, might turn and become one and a half ocean power. And if that route loses the Arctic route, which is going to come into major foreplay in the coming years, it is going to be further isolated. So I think the Americans understand that, and if I would recommend reading an article by Stephen S. Rosen, my friend from Massachusetts Institute. We work together in the foreign affairs when he talks about reordering the American military capacities and capabilities. He are talking now for the first time after a long, long period. They're talking in terms of defending continental US, and that defense of the continental US is coming through the Arctic route. That's where the problem is going to be. And second issue is their force deployment in forward areas. They're again talking about credible force deployment, but not an offensively winnable force deployment. So there is a whole lot of rethinking going on in the United States in terms of their capacities and military capabilities of fighting the kind of wars which they thought. Because if you see closely, America had never fought a big war. The there is a joke was that the only war which they fought was the Vietnam War, which they really did not do so well. And there is and after that they have been fought with local kind of wars, and there also, as we all know, the track record is not very good. So fighting two front major wars is a big challenge for the United States, and we have also seen in a short war in Ukraine how they do not have even the 155 millimeter rounds. Yeah, I mean the whole war is called a 155 war. They do not have the capacity. They're shooting a missile system. The whole thing. So it's not easy. People just think the wars are simply can be fought just like that. But no, you need a strong military backup, and you also need strong capacities, surge capacities, which the Americans do not have. So this is what I'm. So it's going to be 1.5 to two ocean country with limited capacities, and we're going to see some shifts of local players, local middle powers emerging, like rightly said by Dr. Bhatt, to play a more important role in the areas of their own concern.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. The next question, for IMEC to succeed, do we need a new Five Eyes, Security and Intelligence Alliance for Indian Ocean region, all the way from Indonesia, India, Israel, Italy to Ireland? Ambassador Sajjanhar, sir, your views, because it's a new concept, especially in the view of the fact that, look, the focus, while the American focus and many people's focus is on the Western Pacific, I think the Indian Ocean is the future ocean on which one has to focus. I'll also tag one line to it. Trump, during his inaugural address or inauguration speech, did speak of IMEC. And if he was putting so much emphasis on IMEC, there is some value to the way we will have to approach this question. Your views, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, General Shankar. You're right. One would like to put value to what Trump says, except, he's so fond of changing his position every second or third day that, one doesn't really know what to believe. That having been said, if you permit, before I come to this question, very quickly,
Yeah, yes,
that
yeah,
I,
please, sir.
one sentence each, I, make some comments. Number one is that when it was mentioned that we are getting into a new way of multilateralism. I think it is not a new way of multilateralism. It is unilateralism all the way, replacing multilateralism. Not only in terms of, you look at it, for last 15 years, we've not had a single multilateral agreement, and even the agreements that are already there, they are being violated. The second point is, what was made about the quad, that Mr. Trump is getting into partnerships and alliances. He's been the biggest wrecker of partnerships and alliances. You look around, whether it is Canada, whether it's Mexico, whether it is EU, whether it is NATO, and even as far as meaning when he talks about India, he says good things, but then he says tariff king, tariff abuser, I'm going to do this. The language that he uses is not conducive to maintaining trust and confidence and good partnerships. And I think that is what is getting, those countries which were under the US umbrella, either security umbrella or nuclear umbrella. His reliability of Trump, reliability of America has deteriorated, declined very severely. And that I think is advantage China. Because that is why countries, I think Pooja mentioned about this, that is why countries are going to join, so keen to join BRICS and all that. The last point I want to make is, if Taiwan goes, if the United States doesn't come ahead to protect Taiwan, it will have a huge adverse, deleterious impact on the security of Japan also. So, going forward, and we have seen what has happened to Ukraine is because it gave up its nuclear weapons. Now, these are, what a screwdriver action away, Japan, South Korea. Will they also be tempted to go the nuclear way, in terms of violation of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty? I think that is also, one of the impacts of Trump policies. But coming to this question, Jan Shankar, what you mentioned, this is IMEC to succeed. Now, Trump did not mention only IMEC in his inaugural speech. He also mentioned I2U2, which is India, Israel, UAE, and the United States.
Yes.
So I think you have got at least the four eyes. What the questioner is saying, do we need five eyes for security and intelligence? You already have the four eyes. And basically, I don't think we really need to get Indonesia into it, because IMEC is from India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. And we need to get possibly one European power. I think if it is out of these, the strongest would be, in terms of a collaborator, a partner, would be France, because that is where, that is going to be the end of IMEC, where also, the Prime Minister had gone during his visit to France. And also another power, which is a huge expanse of land, which is Saudi Arabia. So, maybe getting these powers in position, I think that would help to really operationalize IMEC. But I think it is, if I could just mention also, that it truly has the capacity and potential of being a game changer. And so, once, although the Israel-Hamas conflict has kept it a little bit on the back burner, but I know that whenever there have been meetings between India and UAE, India and Saudi Arabia, etc., the issue of IMEC has been there very much on the agenda. And all countries are very interested to take it forward. So I think this is a very useful and a very attractive proposition, which will see the light of the day, I would hope, sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Under the current situation, how can we counter the China, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Maldives grouping with 3 active bases as a standalone player? Will it not overstretch us? Madam, could you have a go at it?
I think they should have gone to Brigade of Sahgal.
Okay, fine. Right. No,
No.
you try. There's no harm. Don't worry.
Yeah, so
Have a go at it. You said, we have to be on our own. So just take a shot at it.
no,
Don't worry.
the meaning of on our own was that we cannot trust US beyond a point, but yes, what we can trust US in terms is information sharing and the technology sharing that US has been doing, which will be beneficial for us at the time of any adversity, and that's what I think will and US will be willing to help India. So that was my background of telling that. But
Yeah.
in terms of now these 4 or 5 countries now where China has been present, it only makes India's position even more difficult and even more aware of its neighborhood and its presence in the Indian Ocean region, because that's what I was mentioning in my talk, that we are surrounded by a neighborhood where one party is pro-India and the alternate party in the particular country would be supported by China, and next time that party will win and we will lose our influence in that particular country. So this is something our diplomatic community, our political community uh, has to play as the long game, and it is not just about bases right now. It can it can get blown up as something more blown up as something else if not taken care of. And it is in this regard I would want to say that our only way of tackling these is the MDA, the information sharing, the intelligence sharing, which the countries like US, France, UAE, and other countries are actually willing to do with us. And I think India has been very aware of it, and we are also having active relations with these countries on these regards. I think this would be my take in it, but military part, I think Brigadier Sahgal will
No,
take it.
thanks a lot. Let me put certain things in focus. I think that's a fair take on your
General
thing.
Shankar, could I just intervene? I
Yeah,
have
please, sir.
another
Go ahead.
engagement if I could
Oh,
leave
please,
at
sir.
this
Thanks a
moment.
lot, sir. Thanks a lot
Thank you
for
very
being with
much.
us.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot,
Thank you.
sir.
And
you.
thank you to
Thank
all the
you.
panelists. Thank you
Thank you,
to
Ambassador
both of
Sajjanhar.
you
Thank you very
generals.
much.
I really enjoyed our interaction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Now, let me put it in a different context. Uh, the way I look at it, can we counter China, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh and Maldives? I think we can. And it's a contra view. I think we can, because if you see the situation in Pakistan, China is at risk there, and a huge risk which is not going to go away. Bangladesh is too, at this point of time, too unstable, and one doesn't see stability coming there in the next 3 to 4 years. That's the history of Bangladesh. Right? It leaves only Maldives for us to really focus on. I think militarily we are in a better position to tackle China than at any time in the past. But one has to look at it the other way around. If you look at it, every big country in every this thing will have all its neighbors who are against it. And China faces the same predicament. I mean, we just heard, South Korea and Japan are one screwdriver turn away from becoming nuclear. Just think of China and its problems, because none of us look at it from their point of view. Think of China, which soon can have 4 nuclear neighbors: Russia, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan, with USA not far off. So the situation is not one-sided. So I think you have to look at it the other way. You look at the way Philippines is reaching out to India and the way it's arming itself, and of course Taiwan, what it is doing. So things are not so bad when we say that China doesn't rule the roost all over. In fact, I disagree with that proposition altogether, and everyone knows about it. So with this, sir, unless General Gautam Moorthy, sir, your views, because I'll go to General Brigadier Sahgal in the end. Yeah, yours.
I I quite agree with what you're saying, that today we are better placed in this entire Indian Ocean region than we were ever before, especially with our build up in the Andamans that is happening, our second aircraft carrier. And China is really looking at us right now as a challenge, but as a threat, because the only place where China, and we have discussed this, General Shankar, before, is the rooster neck and their belly, the rooster's belly rather, where they are vulnerable, and that is where India can reach. So we are seeing what is going on in Pakistan. China is invested, but badly invested. But again, there's been no investments for the last 3 4 years. China has not put in anything new. They've inaugurated the airport and all that, but their citizens are under great threat in Pakistan. They know what is happening. So Pakistan has got its hands full thanks to its own doings. Bangladesh, as you said, is not likely to stabilize in a hurry. Sri Lanka, of course, despite Hambantota, we maintain excellent relationship with Sri Lanka. that will continue to grow, and we don't perceive any problem from their side towards us. And Maldives also have realized that they cannot be antagonistic towards India and continue to be the way they are. It is affecting them. So I think we are in a, we not be in an excellent place, but we're in a pretty good place to be able to take on the challenges in this region.
Right. So this is an interesting question, Brigadier Sahgal, sir. News has come out that a lot of military cargo was moved into Diego Garcia, including the B-52 bombers. Your views and what's happening there?
Yeah. Okay. So the B-52 bombers have been brought into Diego Garcia primarily as a joint patrol with the Israelis for the Iran contingency. If you notice, the Americans have been flexing their muscles on Iran lately as a part of his new thinking on Middle East. So I don't think B-52 bombers have got anything more than that. But it was talked about. This news had come out earlier that the joint patrol was being mounted by the thing, and the B-52's importance also lies in the fact that they have got the deep penetration weapon systems, which, if employed, can also tackle the deep sites, nuclear sites of the Iranians. But only 2 days back, we have come across more information has come out that the new base, underwater base, has been created by Iranian Republican Guards, which provides some degree of security to their system. So there's a game of cat and mouse being played over there, and everybody is sending out various kinds of statements. So I don't think it's a what is called low-level strategic posturing by my perspective. I don't think Americans are very serious about it, but the whole idea is that having messed up on Houthis and let go all the information, so they have tried to do some kind of a greater posture. But on this
Yeah, I
issue,
think so.
on this issue of the last question I just like to highlight 2-3 things. Fundamentally, the Bay of Bengal and the Western Indian Ocean or the Arabian Sea are two different places. Bay of Bengal is in our area which is under our total dominance. I don't think the Chinese can do very much in this region. No doubt, there is this base of 8 pens which is created
In Bangladesh, sir.
in Bangladesh with a submarine base. But that's okay. This area is under surveillance. Number 2, lately we have developed capacities and capabilities of long-range surveillance, ISR capacities. I will not go beyond that, which gives us ranges up to 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers deep. So we are generally aware of what is happening. But what is problem to us is more in the western region,
Western,
where
North Arabian Seas.
the Gwadar and this area. 2-3 things developments which are of concern. One is the deal which is being sought out by the Chinese with the Pakistanis of second strike capability, vis-a-vis allowing them to deploy credible systems at Gwadar as a part of their second operational deployment outside China. Things have not fructified too much, but please don't be misled that this is not happening. This is something which is happening. Second is the Hunger class submarines of the Chinese, which they are building up for the Pakistani, all have tubes capable of launching nuclear capable missiles, albeit of ranges which are much less, but equivalent to our K-1516, that is about 750, 800 kilometers. But that is the second strike capability of the Chinese are providing to the Pakistani. So with that kind of control and with the kind of Iran becoming part of the 4-power caucus which I was talking about, that is Iran, North Korea, Russia and China, this is a game at play. How will it play out? I think it's too early for us to speculate. We can create a large number of scenarios at my job, but I don't think it's right now. We should just wait and watch how the developments take place. As far as the India is concerned, we have a fair degree of credible ISR cover, we have a fair degree of capabilities, we can handle this threat, and we should not allow it to percolate beyond a level that becomes problematic for us. As far as the Maldives thing is concerned, I mean, these are the games people play. They will put these fish hooks, they will try and do this, they will bring vessels. They have got enough unmanned underwater capabilities, Chinese, and they will take the temperatures, etc., basically to ensure the movement of the submarines and other elements. So the whole idea is that we cannot, like the Dr. Bhatt rightly said, we have to start focusing greatly on Indian Ocean region, both in terms of commercially, terms of the building up relationships, as well as our security and strategic partnerships. And that's why the Mauritius visit of the Prime Minister was important, and therefore we need to be looking at all these issues a little more seriously, and therefore I think it's important for us to keep our eyes focused in our own region. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Agreed, Dr. But Trump is resetting expectations, but he is also a loyalist, not as transactional as some argue, in my assessment. And this view is coming from an Australian. That's interesting. And he's also put up something else, but it's connected to the UK. Sadly, UK is of no power regarding Diego Garcia, but the US is very reliant on Diego Garcia. Would you like to respond, Dr. Bhatt? Or rather, would you like to put your views across, especially on this part of the story?
I think the Diego Garcia question was very well handled by Brigadier Sahgal as it is. So I don't have as his expertise to extend this argument anymore. But again, thinking of him, thinking of Trump as a loyalist, as a transactionalist, is again in a basis of opinion and based on certain facts. He might be loyalist to maybe businessmen, is his own community, but every businessman is also transactionalist at heart. So I think, leave at that. And I think the way he sees his business transaction, he sees foreign policy at the same time. So yeah, we have to be very careful about how Trump behaves in his foreign policy affairs.
Okay. This is to General Gautam Moorthy. How do military officers in US would be dealing with Trump at this time? How do they talk, convince, work with such an unpredictable leader of the superpower? Any wild guesses? Of course.
See, it is only the very, very senior military leadership that would be dealing with him directly, and that also they would be dealing with through the chairman, Joint Chief of Staffs, as well as the Secretary of Defense. As far as the lesser senior military leadership and the rank and file and the other officers concerned, they will be doing all the tasks that has been allotted to them. They may have the personal opinions, but they've sworn to the Constitution, and they will, like good militaries anywhere in the world, they will take orders from the government of the day. That's all that I have to say about it.
Yeah, I go with you, sir, completely. The question is, so what do you think is the role of UK in Diego Garcia? We'll not answer it here because I've done a full episode on Diego Garcia. Have a look at it. Just type Diego Garcia and in Gunner Shot. Diego Garcia, there's a change of power, or rather the change of status of Diego Garcia itself. UK still owns the main island, but the archipelago has gone back to the Chagosians. And it is in this context, as Brigadier Sahgal said, our recent visit of the Prime Minister to Mauritius is very important. Even on that, I've done a video. Have a look at it because that is important. Yeah. One question, so it's a red herring. How do you see foresee the possibilities between India, Japan, and Russia trilateral? Maybe it can be a good trilateral that will make China think even more. Anyone who can take a shot at it. Like I said, it's a red herring the way I look at it.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
Doctor.
Let's
yeah,
Pooja,
please, ma'am.
madam, please.
Okay, I have a take on these trilateral issues, and basically these trilaterals and plurilaterals which have come in the recent times have come on the basis of a certain workable agenda between 2 and 3 countries, because they understand that they cannot operate on the similar agenda and with the similar tour de force, when it comes to multilateralism. So I think it is in those regards. So if you can find out what is the kind of agenda India, Japan, and Russia would have for trilateral, which they find workable, with the same intensity in the short amount of time, only then it would be workable. It is hugely doubtful seeing Russia-China relationship that. India, Japan, Russia trilateral would be coming together, at least with the China angle in mind. If they have trade or military or some other aspect, so maybe that then they might come. But with China angle, I don't think that's happening. That would be my take at that.
Yeah, that's fine. I think. Would you like to say something? So we'll.
Yeah, basically, the Japan-Russian issue is a victim of the three islands which the Russians have, and the Japanese want it
Circle.
back, and Japanese have been trying to. And the
Circle.
Kuril
second
and
issue is that
cyclones.
India, Japan, and Russia could basically on that oil thing in the northwest, which is I'm forgetting the name, Sakhalin oil. So
Sakhalin
Circle.
oil.
yeah. So,
Circle.
but this is slightly far-fetched. I don't think India, Japan, and Russia, and more importantly, Japan, given its treaty obligation to the United States, Australia can ever wean itself out of the American umbrella. So I think it's a non-starter.
Right. Thanks a lot, sirs and Mrs. Bhatt. Uh, Thanks a lot for this wonderful exposition. We went over Trump and what he's going to do in the Indo-Pacific, and more importantly, what he's not going to do in the Indo-Pacific. But the major takeaways from here are this: the Indo-Pacific won't be hereafter as before. That's gone. Trump will be a challenge both to friends and foes. To that extent, new relationship will come up, and whether they're transactional or not is to be seen, but they will come up. Okay, there is going to be a lot of militarization of this area because each one has to defend himself, and we also will be seeing increased nuclearization of this area. And this has been my postulate a lot now for the past 5-6 years. We talk of a nuclear triangle or with China, India, and Pakistan. But the way I look at it, it's going to become a nuclear quadrilateral. In fact, it will be a pentagon because you have Iran also and Israel also in the vicinity. So this area, you're going to have more nuclearization. And of course, like I said, in China will have a bigger problem with Russia, North Korea, South Korea, Japan, and USA if they ever get into nuclear testing. So we're going to see a lot of interesting things coming up in the Indian Ocean and in fact the Indo-Pacific region. With this, I'd like General Gautam Moorthy, sir, your concluding remarks, and then we'll close for the day.
Uh, Thank you very much, General Shankar. This has been a most interesting discussion. Well, there are 9 months now between now and December, and I'll just quote from the joint statement that the Ministry of External Affairs has put out of the foreign ministers on when they met in Washington on 21st of January this year. They said, and I quote, "We look forward to advancing the work of the Quad in the coming months and will meet together on a regular basis as we prepare for the next Quad Leaders Summit hosted by India." So India is hosting the summit in December, and I'm sure General Shankar will have another discussion on it as to how things have progressed between what we are discussing today and in December. Thank you all very much. Thank you, my Guruji, Brigadier Sahgal. Thank you, Pooja, for coming on to the webinar. It was wonderful and refreshing to hear you and your views on international relations and how Trump is looking at it. And thank you, General Shankar, for hosting this 75th Casa and Gunner Shot webinar. Thank you all very much. Thank you, viewers, the kind of you for your patience and listening. And we look forward to having you again for the third webinar on the Trump series that we're holding on the 4th of April. Thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot. Before I leave, I'd like to thank Dharam for joining me as a member. Ghana Shot, and it's me thinking also once on you come back, and MP8 also who's become a YouTube member. Thanks a lot, and like I said, thanks to everyone, and a great thanks to all those who asked us some intelligent and tough questions. With this, good evening
Yes.
and Jai Hind to all of you.
Jai Hind. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you.
God bless. God bless.
Brigadier Sahgal, sir.